Maybe movies.
No, it's a shit. No, this is exactly what I was thinking.
Is he gonna fart? Is he gonna fart?
No. We're good. We are all good.
Yeah, okay.
Welcome back to anybody who may be prying on us. Welcome back to episode 12 of Maybe Movies. If you were here last week, then you'll know that we're slightly confused as to what the situation is. Did you punch me while you were asleep? Because I feel like I have a fat lip, and I'm not quite sure why. So if you were here last week, you will know that we are looking at a slight change in how we run things for this month's, I was going to say this month's issue, but that just sounds wrong.
No, do you mean this month's episodes?
That's what I meant.
I think that's what she meant.
Yes. In terms of, first of all, how we structure them, and also in terms of what it is we are playing around with within the two movies that we're going to be looking at. So rather than moving protagonists or antagonists, is simply changing the ideology, if you like, of one film from the other. And to facilitate that, we're saying that each of our films were made by the other film's director, but we have managed to find a integral character to each of the stories to move as well. There may be some strange noises in the background because I think it's a lovely, lovely winter, it's not quite winter yet, autumn evening, which would have been perfect for our Halloween show. Damn you, nature!
What can we do? What can we do?
Exactly. So, if we are ready, shall we begin?
Well, I think I'm ready. Let's see how this goes, eh?
Brilliant. Okay, so I have notes. Our first thing that we're going to do, or the first thing that we need to just to remind people of, is our two films, which are John Hughes' 1986 Ferris Buellers Day Off.
Of course.
And David Fincher's Fight Club, which was 1999.
Indeed.
So again, once more, I think we can say that our 3-year gap is properly destroyed because that's 2 in a row now.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah.
But there is a 3 in there because it's 13 years as opposed to 3, so there you go.
Trust you to find a way to link it in.
Oh, that's better. What do we have tonight? We have a cheeky carbonara, I think it is, Sicilian. It's quite nice.
Thanks, hope you enjoy it.
I do. It's so pleasing to see that you have your notebook.
Well, I'm
Finally,
so.
It's only taken you 4 months.
Well,
not that I was counting in any way, shape or form.
I did say I'd get there eventually. How much use the notes will be now, that's a different question.
Yeah, I must admit. Scribble. So we'll see how, and nothing happened. So yeah, I think we'd agreed that we were going to look at our new version of Ferris Bueller first.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
seems
I think
to
that's the more sane option to take.
Yes, it certainly has an easier structure to follow. I must admit this is a bit daunting because, despite being a writer and a script writer myself, I have issues with the 3-act structure. It's just a question of how false it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The reason for its inception and all these kind of things. I'm like,
As a writer of fiction, I don't believe in structure in acts, but I do understand how it can help in the visual form.
Yeah, that's why.
it's one of those, I see so back and forth on that.
But if nothing else, it's a good learning experience about something we don't know don't pay a lot of attention to normally.
Oh, of course.
And the other thing, obviously, again, what we said last week as well, is we're going to look at a number of scenes each, and how we could see those scenes would be different in our new version. Because again, as you pointed out last week, there's a lot, especially in Ferris, that's stuff and business that doesn't need to change because it's not directly involving our main characters.
Exactly, yeah.
So we can just leave that to run on its own. We don't have to discuss it. We just assume that that's been part of the film. Unless, of course, anything else that we change and it might affect that. But then it's just a very passing kind of allusion to it.
I picked up a couple of things. Just they're small dimples. I don't know if we need to go into detail, but we do like. All right. For example, in the famous scene when Rooney is reaming out Cameron,
mm-hmm.
And then Ferris is on line 2
mm-hmm.
to finish the trick. How do you get Ferris on line 2 at the same time as Cameron?
Well,
that's probably the biggest one that I've spotted.
There's a couple of others that I've seen as well, but I think we'll come to them as we go. Let's have a look at. Well, so for Act 1, so we're looking, again, in terms of acts itself.
Yes.
Because I know when I did some research into this, a lot of the things and reviewers and the people who've kind of disseminated the film tend to generally put Act 1 as being, or going from the opening through until when they've collected Sloane from school. But I know you had a different take on that.
It's only a small difference, but I've always felt that act ends when they reach Chicago. Because it's a journey to
So
Chicago.
Act 2 starts as they're dropping off the car?
Yes, yeah, like when they drop it off at the garage and walk away, that's the end of Act 1.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, it's pretty much the same. Yeah.
It's only like literally a scene and a half that happens in between. But I just think, because then you can see it as a journey to Chicago, the journey through Chicago, and the journey home as the three defining part, the definition of the acts then.
So on that basis, so
structure.
would we agree then that the end of Act 2 then would be, I would put that probably, so should I say Act 3 starts when they're back at Ferris's house, is it? Or whoever's house they're at with the pool. Which I don't know whether that's Cameron's house or his or Ferris's.
Now, you see, this is interesting. I actually, in my notes, I had Act 2 ending with the parade, with Twist and Shout.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because
there's a bunch of business with Rooney and Jeannie, and then they pick up the car, and Cameron freaks out when they read the speedometer.
So that would be the beginning of Act 3.
Yeah. I mean, strictly speaking, I was probably wrong, and it probably should just be picking up the car.
would be the beginning of Act 3.
Yes, of course, yeah, because that's the end of their journey in town. Yeah. Okay. Well, should we go with that then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. What have you got first? What is your first scene that you'd like to look at?
Well, I was a little unsure about this one, but actually, in a lot of ways, perhaps the very first scene.
What was that? Fireworks. People are still celebrating.
Yeah, great.
Yes, right. So,
You mean there's people out there?
Well, if not, then who's making that noise?
If we ignore it, it will go away.
Sure. Right.
As you were saying.
I'm thinking, actually, let's start with the first scene.
The opening, that's what I had as well.
I'm not sure what we would change about it, but it feels it's important because, unlike Jack in Fight Club, the imaginary person has a family,
And they are lovely people.
and the more I think about it, the more that beginning isn't really about Ferris. It's about Cameron lying in bed, ignored by his parents, imagining a world where his family gave a shit. And so it feels like if we're talking about this version of Cameron, where obviously his friend is very imaginary, this is establishing that and establishing Cameron's attitude towards people and family.
So it's quite an important scene when you look at it from that perspective.
It is, absolutely. Yes, it is. No, I must admit, I was thinking the same thing when I was watching it. So are we going to say then that essentially the parents who come in, they are his parents, how he would like them to be?
Yes, how he imagines his family might be if he lived in a fluffy world.
Which is kind of weird because when you know what a nice guy Mr. Bueller is, and Mrs. Bueller.
Oh, absolutely.
Just imagining them being assholes is like, oh, okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it.
Well, yeah, no, you're right. Yes, because we never see Cameron's family.
No.
So they could be his parents.
Which interesting that you brought that up. I have a point on this, which kind of throws back into what you were saying there about business that we may need to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So does this then mean in our new version that essentially Jeannie is Cameron's sister?
See, this is one of the ones I was wondering about. I knew we'd have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I mean, she could be imaginary, but I don't know. I feel like she probably is real.
Yeah, that's the thing. She has agency in the film.
Yes, she does. She takes action.
So it kind of feels like she should be real.
She has to be real because everything with Mr. Rooney doesn't make sense otherwise, does it? So she has to be real.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeannie is his sister. So she probably does kind of hate his guts.
Yeah. Do we then accept, or does she have any knowledge then of this imaginary friend that he has? Or just know of Ferris Bueller in the same respect that everybody else knows of Ferris Bueller?
I don't know, because she gets enraged every time his name gets mentioned, doesn't she? She knows that's Cameron.
Yeah.
That everybody calls him Ferris. She would explain why every time somebody goes, oh, you know him.
Yeah.
And she just gets angrier and angrier.
And maybe because they're a very well-to-do family, it's been hushed up that there's anything mentally wrong with their son.
Well,
so she
can't
doesn't
ever necessarily
talk about
know that he's got an alter ego.
Oh, okay.
He just knows that, maybe she just knows that he goes by the nickname Ferris at school.
Perfect. That's brilliant. Like it. But just coming back into what we said before again, this is now Ferris Buellers Day Off, directed by David Fincher.
Yes, of course.
So I got to thinking, with regards to Jeannie, there are many things about her personality. She's quite headstrong, she's quite resourceful, all these kind of things.
Yes.
But there are parallels between her and Marla Singer.
Right.
Are we then saying, because it really depends on whether or not Cameron actually knows Sloane or not. Is everything that happens literally a fantasy in his head, and he's never spoken to Sloane in his life?
No, because he has conversations on his own with Sloane.
That's fine. I wasn't sure.
And
it could have gone. It could,
yeah,
exactly. Yes. Yeah. That
they
was
have
one
all
of the
conversation
ones
together.
they do. Yes, that was one of the ones I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Because I said if you wanted to look at it if you wanted to go properly right under the skin with it, because we've now got Marla Singer in the place of Sloane, who's a very different character.
Yes.
It's almost like, is he projecting part of the aspects of his sister that he doesn't like onto her? But that was working on the premise that her character, that it's only really him wandering around on his own.
Oh, okay, right.
There's an almost quasi-incestual thing going on here. Again, he can't, there's elements of his sister that he likes, but he can't like her because it's his sister, so he projects them onto a third party that is acceptable for him to have desires about that person. If you wanted to go that deep into it, but...
Okay.
It was just a thought, I thought I'd mention it. I don't want to get held up on it too much.
Yeah. It would change some fundamentals, wouldn't it?
Yes.
No, I'm going to be honest. I'm not in love with that idea. Marla being Marla and actually being Sloane's replacement, actually being there, just gives different context. Because again, Rooney sees Sloane leave the school, and we'll come to that in a moment. But that's one of the bits that I want to jump on.
So carry on with what you're saying then about the opening. What else did you have for that?
Well, I think my thought really, the only thing that we might need to change really is to just introduce Cameron to the picture earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it is just a shot of him lying in bed going, God, I feel like crap. And then cut to Ferris.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see Cameron until 20 minutes in.
No, you don't.
In the original version. And I think we need to know Cameron exists earlier, that he's more relevant to the story.
Yeah. Because
it's not obvious, Ferris is the narrator.
Which again is an interesting twist on this version as well, is where our narrator is the imaginary.
Yeah, the narrator is the imaginary friend, whereas in Fight Club it's the real person talking about his imaginary friend. So that.
Which did raise the question then: does Ferris know that he's imaginary?
No, I suspect that like Fight Club, Ferris would know on some level that he's not real. He's there to help Cameron, isn't he? He says repeatedly that he only wants to give him a good time.
True. Okay, we'll come back to that because it feeds into something I had down for later. But we'll come back.
That one's totally up for discussion. I mean, if you wanted to. But I was just trying to think. No, I think a lot of it should stay the same because at this point we don't know.
No, we don't.
The audience doesn't know. So I think it's just about just introducing a couple of elements like Cameron himself and maybe a couple of just slightly off background details that might give you a clue.
So I just think the scene is important within the context of the way we've done it because it does speak to his. It's like their conversation in Fight Club about their fathers and women. It's like that conversation. They're bonding over their family, and it's a similar sort of thing.
True.
It's introducing their idea of what a family is and what it means.
So I would then counter what you're saying there with regards to introducing Cameron earlier.
Yeah.
Because you see this wonderful idyll of how a family could be. And then when you introduce Cameron, it's the first moment of reality that we are seeing.
Okay, yeah, I can see what you're saying there. Yeah. I don't see why not. It was just a small thought, really. Like I said, I just picked on that particular scene because of what it says within the story, not because I think we need to change it over much.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I must admit, in general, watching this one, I found when it came to making notes and kind of examining it, it was less about how would this scene play out, because again, we don't have a new character. Yeah. It's simply how can this scene be interpreted within the new overarching narrative that we have.
Yes.
Which I think is fascinating in itself. Is an interesting way of looking at it.
It's like, what are the rules? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, which is fucking terrifying, by the way.
It is very scary. I mean, this is like kind of starting from scratch. This.
Spent 10 shows building a narrative, and now it's like, no, let's just change it, which is brilliant. But it's always like, what?
Well, we'll see how this goes.
Carry on. So yes. So the opening. So we're taking the opening through to when the parents leave, or we're including his aside to camera up until the point when he calls Cameron. Is that what you're looking at? Because that's. I mean, I kind of covered everything through to the conversation with Cameron over the phone.
I think so. Yes, because I mean, one of the other things, of course, I noticed here is because it immediately becomes apparent that Ferris knows what Cameron is thinking.
Very true. Very true.
Right. He hangs up the phone, goes, "I'm dying." The phone rings, he goes, "You're not dying. You just feel like crap. Now get up." Ferris knows what he's thinking. As soon as I was watching it, I was like, "Oh no, it's right there. It really is right there." He does know what he's thinking.
There's again, if you want to look at him in one respect, so that a lot of this film, despite its very kind of wholesome and upbeat outlook, there is a counterpoint that it is also a commentary on the
alienation,
or simply also about the. If you want to look at that side of it, if you look at the lives that they lead, it's the hollowness of success because they both come from very affluent families. There's a certain sense of feeling disenfranchised by the success of their parents.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean.
Yes. So
sorry, I over and over again when I was watching it, I found that little moments over here. There's a moment of alienation. There's a moment of alienation. There's a moment of alienation. Alienation with your family, with society, with your friends, with your peers. Mm-hmm. It's a really strong undercurrent throughout the film. Even with Jeannie, she's alienated from so much.
Yes.
To the point that she ends up at the police station.
With Charlie Sheen.
Yeah. First major film appearance. Never realised that.
Really?
Recently.
Yeah. See, I suppose you get so used to seeing him, you'd have kind of figured that there must have been something before that. But
I'd always figured that he'd already done Oliver Stone. War movie. Goodness me.
Platoon. Yes, I thought that he had already done Platoon, and that was almost like a joke cameo. Like, look at the famous dude being the junkie in the police station.
No,
and I didn't realise it's actually that was shot before he did Platoon, almost directly before Platoon.
Huh. It's going to be in a big film. We need to get him something else first. There you go.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know exactly what happened, but
random fact. There we go.
We're full of them. Okay. again, I mean, I didn't really have anything else down for that one. As I said, it's all
Pretty self-explanatory, really.
Yes.
It's just about changing the viewpoint of
I mean, again, we have to allow for that, as we said, because we're changing directors. We don't know really how David Fincher might approach that. What elements, even if they're tertiary within shot, that you might put in to heighten these senses of alienation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
there would that's what I mean. There would probably be little things visually in the background that would be not quite right, or just off, or there'd be a little shake or something like that. There would be little things that might give you a little clue. I mean, like the early sections of what Fight Club does.
Yes.
There are little cues. Things are shaking. Oh dear, reality is distorting.
True.
There are a lot of visual cues in that film.
Well, as I said, that's me covered as well on that one. That's the same as what I had. And of course, I'd forgotten his obviously very famous line about life moving very fast, which makes a very prominent appearance in another film that I know we both love, Demon Knight.
Oh yes.
He uses it at the end of that, doesn't he? Billy Zane uses it.
Of course he does. Yes.
Because this is one of those films I remember watching it as a teenager, and then I didn't watch it again for quite a number of years.
Oh, it was a huge thing for me as a teenager. It was one of those, almost was a philosophy for me at a certain point in time. I was a very timid teenager, and the idea of the outrageousness of being like Ferris was quite inspirational at that time. It did help me realise that I didn't have to choose to be that way. I could choose to be something else. And so it had a lot of importance to me at the time. Like I said, I watched it over and over and over. But I was like that when I was a teenager. There were about a dozen movies that I used to know off by heart.
Wow.
Because I watched them so many times.
Yeah.
I used to be able to do a lunchtime rendition of Robin Williams at the Met, almost in its entirety.
I remember having that. I remember a friend of mine giving me that and then watching it to death.
Yeah.
Because it was fantastic.
Literally to death.
Very
So much so I
fantastic.
could literally quote it the entirety. But no, moving on. What's your second
My
scene choice?
second scene that I chose. Now I must admit, because I said this is a new format for me, I only had two for the first part.
Okay, that's fair enough. I've kind of got two and one I want to discuss.
Fine, because that can fill in the one that I don't have. My second one, oddly enough, is something that you mentioned earlier, is the phone scene when he calls Rooney.
Oh, because that was my kind of want to talk about.
Perfect.
Okay.
I love it because it works. It you can literally have him in two different rooms, or you could have the phone here, the phone here. Obviously, we only see the two different people.
Yeah, but Ferris calls Grace whilst Rooney is talking to Cameron. That's the problem with it. How do we fix that?
It's a recording.
Of course it's a recording. He's already demonstrated multiple times that he'll use tape recordings to goof people. Oh, sorry guys, that should have been obvious from the beginning.
Yeah, it just. I just love the idea of. I was thinking more again of the bits from Fight Club where they're in different rooms and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
That works more when you get Marla in there as well when she's seeing them.
Of course, yeah.
Well, no, simply he's got that set up on it. Right, this far into my call, boom.
Yep.
Called it. Obviously, we don't see that
because
we just see what's in his head is Ferris getting changed.
Yep.
And calling the
He's
school.
done a trick with an answering machine to make it seem like yeah, of course that works. That does work.
It's a great scene. It shows ingenuity. It shows Rooney and Grace up beautifully. I just love her running backwards and forwards, waving her arms, or trying to figure out what to do, looking for the phone number or whatever it was.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I love it as well because there's things in there. When you look at Cameron's performance as well, when he's on the phone pretending to be Mr. Peterson, also in this case, to be Mr. Singer.
He's really enjoying himself.
He's really enjoying himself. He's really good at it, and it's not until Ferris enters the room that he starts to go overboard. It feels like he's playing up to his imaginary friend.
Right. You're absolutely right.
That's where
yes.
it's only when he thinks he's playing up, but then he gets put under pressure by his friend, and then that's where things start to go slightly wrong.
Of course, and that's when they start fighting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Start fighting.
Yes.
You hit me.
Yeah. I know. I've written it right here.
And so have I. But again, so we can take it a bit further with the phone call in terms of what he's actually saying on the phone. He can be a little bit more Again, taking into account who it is who's directing it, you can almost see elements of Edward Norton's character getting a bit when he. I mean, I know it would come out later. I suppose more later when he's doing it when they're at the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
But here as well, trying to put people in their place, put functionaries in their place.
Oh yes, I see what you're saying. That's what you were talking about earlier on when you were talking about class and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I get where you're leaning now. Okay. All right. Okay. So it's petty bureaucracy, petty functionaries.
Yeah.
So do you think that Cameron thinks somewhere deep down he thinks he's above those things?
Or does he just hate petty bureaucrats? And
I must admit, I don't know how deep he believes it. He knows it's a way of getting what he wants because he's playing off Rooney.
Of course, right? Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because again, obviously, a lot of the character with Rooney is he's very good at what he does. He's very good at his job.
he's efficient, yes.
Yes, he's efficient. But he's always going to be on a lower social strata than the kids at his school. Certainly those particular kids, because they are from a very affluent families.
Of course they are. Yes. Yeah. He's just a caretaker at the end of the day.
And if he can use that to get what he wants, especially
Yes, because it's also the petty tyranny, isn't it, of the school system? But yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm not meaning to diverge too much, but of course, John Hughes. I mean, it turns up in Breakfast Club and things like that with the I'll just have another thing because I don't like the way you looked at me.
yes,
Kind of the petty bureaucracy, petty tyranny of these bureaucrats, and then him being affluent, it would be a double insult, wouldn't it? You know,
exactly.
So just okay. I'm buying that.
Cool.
I'll buy that for $1.
Now this brings in a question as well, because Rooney is already after Ferris.
Oh, yeah, because...
So how does he know that Ferris exists if he doesn't actually attend the school because he's never been there because he doesn't exist? It's the only big plot hole that we have.
I wondered about this for a while, and actually maybe we should have had a discussion at the beginning, but I'm beginning to wonder, even though Rooney is a real person,
Mm-hmm.
I still think these are imagined scenes from Cameron's point of view.
Okay.
And of course, in his mind, it's not him doing it, it's Ferris doing it.
And at the end of the day, Rooney never lays eyes on either of them until the very end of the movie.
No, because that was the other thing as well. Again, it is a bit of an aside. It's not a tangent, but it's an aside. There's so much of this played up about Ferris taking the day off.
Yes.
But there is nothing about Cameron's family calling the school. There is no reference to him, his parents saying he's
It's like
sick.
he doesn't exist.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, the only kind of context within the school itself that exists is the teacher calls out his name.
Yes.
He's not there. But nobody says anything.
But in terms of the plot and like Rooney he's going after Ferris, he doesn't care about Cameron.
Even when they discuss Sloane, they talk about hanging out with Ferris.
With Ferris, yeah.
You know, but I'm also wondering if we can just chalk that down to him being referred to as Ferris at school.
Fair enough.
It'd be kind of nice that it's got to such a point that even the administration refer to him as Ferris. It's one of those things that later on down the line, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
When you come to the reveal, it's like, oh God, do we have to keep calling him Ferris?
Yeah. It's not another fact that they've got a whole school record for him as Ferris and everything as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
With the version we're going with, and at some point we need to reveal, that's pretty out there stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I like the idea of it just being. It's got so elaborate that even the administration is involved in the process. So do you have anything else to add to that?
The thing that I did put down was that it feels at times that Cameron is almost playing the role that he imagines his own imaginary friend wants him to be. And I wrote that down and I didn't put down an example, so I can't remember.
Well, I wonder if that's him really obviously enjoying impersonating Mr. Pearson and things like that.
Yeah.
Because he does a little jingle, a little dance, and he starts playing with the braces and everything.
He's kind of enjoying himself.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that seems like the obvious.
Yes, and then obviously...
So maybe you think that's him pretending to be what?
What he thinks his friend wants him to be. Or that's the nearest that he thinks that he can be like his friend.
Yeah, that's nice. I like it.
Yeah.
It's a nice touch.
And then as soon as he gets put in his place, then as soon as he's told that he's messed up.
And that's when it all goes wrong.
Yeah, he starts retreating to himself. He wants to go home, even though technically he is home.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Which again, I know we haven't really touched on it, but that adds a whole other dimension to the whole thing of him sitting in his car. Because he goes outside and just sits in his car. And he goes, no, I'm going to go, no, No, and he hasn't actually gone anywhere.
Oh my god, yes it does.
But again, this also serves very much feeds very much into the idea from what the original guy who posted this. I did have a look. I couldn't really find who was the originator of this. It seems to have turned up several times independently over the internet. On the internet over the years. It also feeds into this idea of this is the only way they would be able to see as much of the city in a single day as they could, is if most of it doesn't actually happen. It's all in here.
Oh, right. See, that for me is a little too much of a stretch. It makes the story start to fall apart.
Mm.
You know, the actual thing that you're watching starts to fall apart, doesn't it, at a certain point?
It does, yeah.
If it's all fictional, it's all one of those, and it was all a dream endings. And we all know how people feel about that stuff.
Exactly.
And I'm not willing to head in that direction.
I think the general thrust of it was that the events, while they're in the city, are fictional, but Cameron is actually there.
Yeah.
He's wandering around and he's seeing things, and he's imagining how he would like things in these.
In their version, he's wandering around like a madman. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That was all I had on that one. What did you have for your second?
It's a pretty small one. It's the scene when we pick up Sloane, or rather in this case, Marla. Just because the swap of the character will change the context of that scene considerably.
Mm.
I will give you the quote from the original movie. So that's how it is in their family. Juxtapose that with a quote from where the original origin of Marla. I haven't been fucked like that since grade school. Now, with Marla in that scene, it would probably go a little bit further. Not like, obscenely so, but
yeah.
Just, I can imagine that because she's not this beauty queen. She's not.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of sleazy. She's kind of punky. She wears whatever in her hair, and then just throwing herself at her, supposedly her father.
Yeah.
And it would be a proper knee in the groin and rubbing up and yeah. And of course her reaction to being told by the nurse that her grandmother's died, I can imagine Marla doing these ridiculously almost sarcastic overreactions and everybody taking it really seriously.
It's almost tempting to want to say what would she say, but it's like I can't think of anything that would be good enough to merit to
I can't think of any lines, but she absolutely would have some little comments under her breath.
Yeah,
like when she's walking down the hallway with the nurse. So I just
possibly something about always having another one.
Oh yeah. I just see that there's a lot of potential in that scene because this is the first time we see Marla as well. Mm-hmm. So this is the new girlfriend.
Yes,
the new situation. So I want to see her being Marla, but also just the idea that how that scene ends with so that's how it is in their family comment. It just seems like it'll be just so much more on the nose.
Yes,
it won't even be up for question.
No, I love it. So, are we saying then that as far as Marla is concerned, again, it's the same dynamic? She doesn't know that he has these two personalities, or she just knows him as Ferris?
I think she just knows him as Ferris.
Okay.
Which I'll come back to when we get to a later point. So I do think she thinks he's Ferris.
Okay, I'm interested.
Or at least she knows him as Ferris.
Yeah. We lose, then I'll take it, any kind of reference to her talking to Cameron hidden in the back seat. Unless she knows that he sometimes talks to someone called Cameron who she believes doesn't exist, and is Ferris's imaginary friend.
Actually, I like that even more. I like that. Yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yes. So she's playing along, like he's having a conversation with his imaginary friend.
Yeah, and
she's playing along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's turned up. Yeah, of course he is. Of course she is, because he's turned up to pick her up in a Ferrari and taken her out for the day. So yeah, fuck it, he's got an imaginary friend. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
You do.
Marla would not care.
No, she wouldn't.
Marla would not care. Actually, it makes even more sense with Marla.
Yeah.
Lovely. That's brilliant.
So, Jesus, so that's Act 1.
That's Act 1, unless you've got anything else to add there?
No. That's all I've got on for that one at the moment. And at this point, I must say, I'm so impressed that you remembered to actually bring and use your notebook. That I think you should have a badge.
Oh, yay, a badge. A badge I will wear with pride.
It's a badge that reminds us all that notebook is a secret weapon.
Yes, it is.
Well, if you do want one, then you can get them from our website. That's our
on,
first bit of merch, I
There we go.
suppose. That was originally because of stuff that we've done on social media elsewhere as a publishing company, which we do as well, but also has a certain amount of bleed through in what we're doing here. So if you do want one, check out our website. Links will be where they need to be.
Indeed.
Alternatively, and with regards to this, if you want a proper, I've gone bargain basement for this particular one, but if you want something a bit nicer, if you put a bit more store in your secret weapon,
Indeed.
then I would highly recommend checking out Origin Wares, who's a new local business based here in Norwich. So you start a business that produce and sell like leather journals / notebooks,
Shiny.
artisan olive oil soap,
Oh yes.
incense, things like that.
Very nice.
As I said, new business. They've only been going about 6 weeks, I think.
Oh, right.
But yeah, they're
Very
doing
good.
great things. So do check them out. All of their products are made by the community of the world.
That sounds fantastic.
So yeah, definitely give them a look.
Yeah, please check it out, guys.
Act 2.
Act 2, yes. So, finally in Chicago we are.
We are finally in Chicago. But the other thing I liked as well is when they drop off the car and they're talking to the attendant, and there's just 1 minute where he just turns around and goes, "Oh yeah, it's all right. It's all right, sir."
Yeah.
And there was just that little bit of, "Oh yeah."
What?
There's a little bit of Tyler Durden there going on. It's just like,
Yeah,
"Oh, okay."
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Ooh, shiny.
It is shiny. It is very shiny. Yeah.
It's very nice of you to provide it.
I was about to say the same to you.
So my first shout out has to be going to lunch.
I think.
Then I shall gazump you if I may,
Okay, yeah, please
because
do.
I've got the stockroom scene.
Oh, the stockroom
Or
scene.
stockroom,
right.
stock market scene, should I say.
Yep.
It's an interesting thing. So the opening shot when they're up in the tower,
Mm-hmm.
and then before they get up onto the thing, when they're just looking out the window, you'd have all notice that the only other people in that scene, the only other extras, there's a couple of businessmen, but wearing like party hats.
I did notice that. Do you mean the bit when he's watching the stock room, the stock exchange room?
No.
Doing-
Because they're upstairs first of all, isn't it? Right at the top of the building, looking out the window.
Oh, that's right. They look out at the top of the tower and then they go down to the stock exchange,
Yeah.
don't they? Of course, yeah.
I kind of incorporate the two as one scene. If you don't mind that,
I can understand that because they both have the same context, don't they?
some nice elements of Ferris just doing his thing, but again, they echo with a lot of the premise of the whole idea, if you like, of Tyler Durden is that gets people to see things from a different point of view.
Yes, he
Like getting
does.
up and getting looked down there, and I noticed as well immediately that Cameron goes on about I think I can see my dad.
Yeah, bastards down there somewhere.
Exactly, and straight away Ferris changes the subject.
Yeah, exactly. I did consider this scene for the very same reason because when they then move downstairs and are watching the stock exchange, Cameron is relentlessly mocking them.
Mm-hmm.
Does an entire Three Stooges thing. Really gives you a context of what he thinks, because presumably this is part of his parents' world. Like he says, my dad's down there somewhere.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's a joke. He thinks it's slapstick. And especially when you look at that from this perspective of a psychologically damaged being.
Yes.
It really does say a lot. But it's also the first time. No, it's not. It's not the first time. I was going to say it's the first time he mentions his father, but of course not. He mentions it when they take the car. But it shows us that he's fixated on his father.
Yes. Yeah, that is the root of all of this. That's obviously the focus, or the cause probably of the invention of Ferris in the first place.
Mm.
If you want to look at it in that respect, it's possibly another reason why he changed the subject, because the more he talks about his father, the more he might realise that his friend doesn't exist.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
The other things, but the bit when they move downstairs, and as you say, he's doing the bit when they're watching the stockbrokers at work, and it's more to do with the conversation between Sloane and Ferris, but Cameron is very definitely on the outside of that.
Yes, he is. He's sitting at the back.
He's put himself on the outside of that, which again, made me think of Fight Club. That sometimes he would be him, sometimes he would just be. He would imagine himself moving through the crowd.
I was thinking about that myself as well.
Oh yeah, I was always wondering about how Marla would receive it, would take being proposed to.
Oh. Well, surely she's going to mock it relentlessly, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's far too cynical to even indulge that idea for a moment. It's a joke. That's fine, because Sloane laughs off as well, doesn't she? I think that's the difference, though, is that Sloane thinks it's a joke in the original film, whereas Marla would treat it as a joke.
As a joke, and make it, obvious.
And openly mock it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I did notice about this scene as well is his little Cameron's diatribe about not wanting to get married because of looking at his parents.
I was literally just about to say that.
It stumps Ferris. There are these moments where his imaginary friend doesn't have an answer for everything.
Yes.
And this is one of those kind of brutal realities that he cannot gloss over.
Yeah, he can't. And Marla mocking it is kind of a reflection of that. It's there's certain subjects that Ferris is not created to deal with.
Mm. But obviously we know that secretly this is something that Cameron wishes that he could say, but he knows that's Cameron. He can't say it because X, Y, and Z to do with his parents.
Of course, yeah.
Which is fantastic. So he's constantly feeding his imaginary friend with things that he wants. It's not just how he wants to look, how he wants to act. It's
exactly. But I mean, if you think about what you're saying, that scene, look at my parents. Mm-hmm. This is why I think Marla has to be real, because this is something that would actually draw her to him. Because it aligns more, which is why, getting ahead of ourselves, but that's why I like the idea of Marla being real, because there's a growing, she's interacting with Ferris, but she's slowly meeting Cameron.
Oh, that is a gold star. That's beautiful. No, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because again, that's the other thing with this scene and how we're looking at this now, is how Marla takes this interaction, because she's essentially talking to two people.
Yeah.
We've said that she's playing up to it and she's playing along with it. But at what point does she start to feel uncomfortable? I mean, it's Marla saying she probably doesn't. She very rarely feels uncomfortable.
No, she probably just thinks he's an odd person.
Yeah.
She's playing along.
You asked me to marry you, but then you tell me I'm not going to marry you because you're not going to marry me because X, Y, and Z to do with your parents.
Yeah, of course.
What the fuck is going on?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But we're going off to lunch, so let's see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it really does call back to the relationship in Fight Club, doesn't it? If you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. So you want to go to lunch?
I do. I want to go to lunch. Because again, I mean, for starters, I enjoy that scene. It's another example of their ingenuity in the use of telephone systems.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But, I mean, little moments, like asks for a table for three, and the snooty waiter gives them a funny look.
Again, it's a little moment that's there in the original.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's looking at them for a different reason in the original. But
yes, but now he's like, yes.
Yeah, now looking at them in a funny way.
This goes back, I suppose, a little bit to that, what you're saying, like with Tyler, imagining himself stalking around the outside. Is the scene when it's just him and what would be Marla, and he's crunching ice cubes and squirting stuff out of his teeth and things like that. And Ferris is in the bathroom talking about his home life and how everything is so beautiful and so clean and you aren't allowed to touch anything.
You want to come on to that? Because that was my scene too.
Oh, I see. I count that as part of lunch, you see.
Okay, so we can get... this is kind of cool.
I count both then. That whole lunch scene is interesting to me because it goes through several different layers. Because again, it ends with a near encounter with his father.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
So to me, that I've been taking that whole thing as one.
That's cool.
One
I just focused on the one bit on the bathroom bit.
Oh right, well you.
So I put it down. So the first thing I wrote down here, and I'll read it verbatim for what I put down here. It's a wonderful insight into how an imaginary friend might view the turgid repression of the real world. He has no boundaries.
Yes, of course.
But he understands that Cameron does, and so he's kind of what he's talking about there is it's from his perspective. It might be how an imaginary friend sees things.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. See, what I find interesting about that kind of idea is that it's also juxtaposed with a moment where Cameron is actually breaking boundaries and would probably be bonding with Marla. You know, his inappropriate behaviour at the table would probably amuse the hell out of her.
Yeah, that's true.
It would be an actual bonding moment for the couple. And at the same time, there's Ferris, you know, doing the thing that he does, not really getting the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I put down about it as well with that scene is there is never a question that he is doing anything wrong. Again, it's that he's because he's imaginary, he's absolved of any responsibility. Therefore, he never questions whether or not what he is doing or what he's getting Cameron to do is right for Cameron.
Yes, no, of course, yes. He's taking advantage of opportunities.
Yeah. And it just in that scene in particular, for some reason, just what he was talking about, it just becomes very evident.
Mm-hmm.
If you put him in, if you're looking at it with the framework that we're now looking at it. There's another bit that I put here which I'm trying to read because I can't read my writing. This happens a lot. Disdain dressed up as altruism for the reality of Cameron's upbringing. I have no idea what I meant by that.
Say it again.
The disdain dressed up as altruism for the reality of Cameron's upbringing.
I think you're talking about that mirror scene again.
Yes, it's on the same lines, it must be.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's not allowed to touch anything. What was it? Imagine growing up in a household like that.
Yeah.
I think that's the next line. So it's his disdain for it.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're talking
That's
about.
probably what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I put down this, it's a lovely scene because you have this wonderful aside with obviously the bathroom attendant there, and then he leaves, and then his dad is there as well. Which is just, again, wonderful. I love that because, again, it would work because you can imagine Cameron actually being there, washing his hands and not actually saying anything. So that whole thing is silent, but this is all going on in his head.
Oh, I see. You see, I'm imagining it the other way around, where Cameron really is out in the restaurant having fun with with Marla.
Oh, okay.
And he's imagining Ferris's little monologue in the bathroom.
So then are you saying that he's already left by that point, the fact that his dad is there, is that something that he's imagined as well? Which then it just happens to come true because he is actually there.
I always kind of figured like, well, his dad's about to walk out of the bathroom because he just washes his hand and walks out after Ferris.
Mm.
So it's like he's imagining this and then he sees his dad step out of the bathroom.
And then rolls it into his...
And then, of course, we then cut to them out on the balcony outside the restaurant, trying to get to a taxi before Dad turns around.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if you noticed, but in that scene, when they're up on their little balcony bit from the restaurant, Sloane's forward, Ferris is forward, Karen's in the middle facing the doors of the restaurant with his back to his dad.
No, I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah.
Cameron's the one who's hiding from Ferris's dad.
Absolutely. Oh.
So it's another reason.
2 gold stars.
It's another reason why I wanted to pick that scene.
Yeah.
That whole restaurant sequence is gold in terms of the interpretation we're doing here.
No, that is brilliant. I hadn't even noticed. I think it's because I kind of again too many things with trying to figure out new format.
Of course,
I'm not looking at it as much as I may do in other as I've let myself down. Sorry.
I'll forgive you.
So we've so that's your number 1. That's my number 2.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what do you have for your number 2?
It's just a brief moment, but it's the visit to the art gallery that I quite liked.
Okay,
This was the scene that I picked in my mind when you were talking about, like, he talks about imagining Tyler being in the middle of the crowd while he stalks around the outside, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
This is the scene that came to my mind when I was thinking of that concept, when they go to the art gallery,
mm-hmm.
and they're both goofing. They're all goofing around for a little bit, and then Ferris and Sloane go off and have a private moment and a kiss.
Yes.
And at that same moment, Cameron is staring at the Monet picture and
mm-hmm.
the little girl in the shadow.
Yes.
It's another moment of it's the best image of alienation in the entire film. Mm-hmm. I think for me it's the clearest.
And
agreed. I did.
It gets you in the feels.
Again, when you're looking at it from this perspective, he's not even allowing himself to enjoy this moment with Marla.
Yeah.
He's off looking at the pictures.
It just really speaks to his character, like how he feels he couldn't, even though he has this moment in the rest. Because again, we're assuming that this is all, the fictional universe. So he's enjoyed that moment in the restaurant, but when she kisses him, he can't be present in the moment.
He has to be somewhere else. Interesting, because the only thing I didn't look at it that deeply, I wish I had now, because that's fantastic. All I was thinking of is that moment, again, it's a wonderful moment of isolation when he's looking at the picture, and he's looking at the little girl, and one of the things I picked up with it, and having seen that picture somewhere, it's when you look at a little girl, and as with a lot of Monet stuff, nothing is crisp, everything is indistinct, everything is slightly blurred.
The closer you get, the less is there.
Yes, and it's an allegory for how his life is, because everything is slightly blurred, because he never quite knows who he is.
Exactly. Oh, yes. Yes, yeah, Gold Star you. Gold Star you. Yeah.
That's about as much as I sort of took from that, from that scene, watching it. Although the little boy who looks directly at the camera, when the kids
I
walk
always
past,
forget about that. Yes, of course.
and where the chain is broken, and this little boy is at the end of the chain, or it's after him that the chain is broken.
Yes.
And he just pans around and goes, bing, camera.
Yeah. Somebody told him not to look at the camera, so he looked at the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's all I wanted to say about it. It's a small moment. It's just very powerful emotionally.
It is.
And again, in this new context, it hasn't even...
It goes even further.
It's got layers, like an onion, baby.
But that's number 2 for me.
Oh!
If anybody who knows their M.R. James will know what I'm talking about when I say, here, I think this should be yours.
Oh, thank you.
And that's meant in a nice way, not in the M.R. James way, because it's not good.
Like an onion, baby.
Put that there. I did not see that coming. I did not see that coming.
Well, neither did I. I just put my hand there and it was there.
Oh.
So I don't know.
It just happened to be sitting there. You have random vegetables
It
on
wasn't.
your couch.
Well, I hope not. Well, actually, I hope so, because it's getting into stew season. So.
There you go.
So number 3.
Yes, number 3. I'm curious about what yours is.
Now, this is going to be an interesting one because it might actually end up that I've only got 2 for this one, and that my number 3 will actually be my number 1 for Act 3, which we'll do next time.
Okay.
It's after they picked up the car and found out about it,
Oh, right.
and it's the bit where they're down by the edge of the river or by the lake or whatever, and he's catatonic on the thing.
I know the bit you're talking about. That's very clearly in Act 3.
That's cool. Then I can put this away.
Oh, you can put that down. Oh, right. Well,
Although there's a couple of small things that I noted, just background stuff. But go.
So my third scene is during the parade, perhaps unsurprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a number of little moments there. There's the encountering the parade, and they bump into Dad's in the taxi next to them and things like that. But it's after the songs start in the parade, and Ferris is up on the floats making a fool of himself with all the Oktoberfest girls.
Yes.
And Cameron and Sloane go for a walk on the plaza.
It is a very
and they
good one.
have a discussion about the future and about Ferris. And I think this is a really important scene, especially from the perspective of our new version, because it's one of the first times they don't talk about Ferris in the third person.
Don't talk to her about me.
Yes.
Yes.
But what do you think Ferris will do next year?
And Marla, being the kind of person who would run with it, would probably want to know.
No,
I think you're missing my point.
Okay.
I think this is a corresponding scene to Tyler's gone. Tyler went away. Tyler's not here.
Yes.
I think this might be the moment that she starts to realise that there's something more going on with Cameron.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh no, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
And that's why I think that scene's important, because I think it's where everything turns.
Mm-hmm. And she starts now being more.
Because she's not the perspective character, but she's a perspective character, so we can start to see her viewpoint on it.
Yes.
And we can start to see that, something's not right.
Because we're close to where we need to put a reveal in.
We are, which we haven't discussed.
And it just feels like that's the perfect moment to have another character realise that something's wrong.
It's perfect. No, it does work. Because, I mean, if you take even like the dialogue that Sloane says, is that she says stuff that shows that she identifies with Cameron. She doesn't know what she's going to do. All of those kind of things. And now it makes narrative sense because, as you say, she's like, there's Ferris. Oh, there's Cameron.
Because before that, it's like, how are you? How are you?
Yeah.
All right. And then, oh no, now we're talking about Ferris like a third person.
I love it. I love it. Yes, yeah. I did look at that scene, and they said there was a couple of bits that I thought, oh, that's nice.
Because he also says, like, oh, Ferris will do this, but I'm going to do this. We'll probably do this, but...
Fascinating, because we'll see when we come on to number 3.
Yes.
But obviously that'll be next time. The only thing that I did notice...
Well, I think it directly feeds into that scene, because
It does,
it's Ferris's side of that conversation, isn't it?
You're going to have to wait.
Yes, we'll have to... Yeah, we can't get into that now, but yes.
But the other thing, sorry, just slightly rewinding a bit, is when they're in the taxi,
Mm-hmm.
and this is just a thing for us,
Yes.
because when they're in the taxi and they've ducked down,
Uh-huh.
or at least Cameron's ducked down now.
Yeah, of course.
And Sloane's sitting up
And
there.
Marla's sitting in the back seat.
Yeah. Giving his dad the eye,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. But he's rubbing a rabbit's foot.
Oh, yes, he is!
Which made me think of obviously the lovely stuff he had about obviously the history of
Of
the
rabbit's feet.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course.
So that seems to bring us pretty much neatly to the end of Act 2.
Does bring us to the end of Act 2.
Yay. You're getting there, folks.
Absolutely. And so we will pick this up next time then when we will look at our Act 3s.
Uh-huh.
And then we'll also be looking at Act 1 of our very strange new version of Fight Club.
Yes.
Which I'm going to have to go back and have another look
It's going
at.
to be interesting. I'm not sure that one's going to work. And I know I've said that before, but I'm really not sure this one's going to work. I'm liking what we're getting with this one so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting way of doing it. Again, it's a nice change from just, because we've only changed one character.
Yes.
I mean, we've allowed for them to be in this narrative closer to the original than if we literally just dumped her in at the point of, or with the life experience that she's had up to that point.
Yes. Yeah. 'Cause
In the original film,
Yeah.
because she'd just go, no, she wouldn't even be in school to start.
Oh, she wouldn't.
So we've had to allow a certain amount of
Yeah.
conceit there to allow that to happen.
A little bit of leeway. Hope you're okay with that, folks.
But again, as we discussed, this would be Marla Singer at high school.
Exactly. She's not quite that cynical. She's not quite that beaten down yet.
Yes, or suicidal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That too. Yeah.
I love it. That's cool. So please do come back and join us next week when we'll continue this on. As always, if you do like what we're doing here, and if you have any thoughts about how we, or on the things that we're discussing, and or things that we may have missed, then please let us know in the comments. And as always, do consider liking, sharing, and subscribing.
Or as we say, like
subscribe.
subscribe.
Sorry, but forgot the thumbs up. And thanks again. Take care under the new regime, and we'll see you soon.
TTFN.
Ba 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 ba.